I'm a very big action user. I'll talk a bit more about what I do. My name is Baptiste. You can call me Bap, B-A-P, if that's easier. I understand that my name is not the easiest to pronounce. I'm a videographer. You'll see me doing a lot of stuff with drones. I try not to crash them too often. I do a lot of underwater stuff, which is why I've been based in Malaysia, because you guys have awesome diving, and I shoot a lot of products. My girlfriend and I own a studio here in KL. We've been shooting for quite some time, and action cams are always in my bag. I do this for a long time. I've actually been based in Southeast Asia for more than 10 years. I spent about 7 years in Vietnam, about a year in Singapore, and I've been based in Malaysia for the past 6 years. And all of my memories, everything I do, a lot of the stuff that I do are actually being captured with DJI product. When it's not a drone, it's going to be an action cam. When it's not an action cam, it's going to be the Pocket 30. So there's at least one or two DJI products in my bag somewhere, wherever I go. Now, obviously, action stuff are very exciting. Like, this is some of the work that I posted. You can check out on Instagram. This is some of my aerial stuff. I love flying drones, but that's not the only thing that I do. So whenever it comes to diving, I'm always very pumped. Those videos are not playing, but it's okay. So I've been diving for more than 10 years, and my camera of choice whenever I'm going down under is always going to be an action cam. Now, it's not the only thing I do. The videos are not playing, but it's okay. If you can maybe play the video, that'd be great. But whether it's the Action 3, the Action 5, and more recently the Action 5 Pro, it's essentially been capturing a lot of the memories and a lot of the activities that I've been doing. Now, above and beyond all the technical specification that Sarah talked about, the question that I ask myself whenever it comes to action cam is always kind of the same question. And the question that I ask myself, again, is kind of like, well, I understand the tech spec. I'll read the tech spec. It's always very exciting to kind of understand whether the camera can shoot in that resolution or that resolution. But the real question is kind of always like, hey, is that going to help me create better content? Is this camera going to help me elevate the content quality that I create wherever I go? So this is kind of the experience I always want to bring. This is the kind of gears. So whenever I'm packing for a trip, I always make sure that I'm going to be packing as efficiently as possible, hence the choice of cameras and drones that are going to go into my bag, and the question of making sure that the camera is actually going to be working. I hear that we have a technical problem, but don't worry, the slides will be right back on. And essentially what I'm going to try to do over the next couple of slides or so is tell you a bit more about how do I actually use my action cameras. And the videos are working, yay! So this is kind of a couple of weeks ago when I received the product for the first time. I was very excited to do an unboxing video to kind of then start stress testing the product. And we have taken it out quite a bit. We went around Malaysia, we worked with a couple of creators, and we went and tested the limits of the camera. So I'm going to be sharing some of the work that we've been creating with this camera, if the clicker decides to work. There we go. Alright, back to the question that I was asking. So the first thing that I've kind of noticed about this camera more specifically is that it definitely gives me peace of mind. Now, the last thing I want to do whenever I'm creating content is to worry about the gears. I don't want to worry about the technical stuff. I don't want to have any technical issues. So knowing that I've got a product in my bag, I've got a product in my hand that is not going to fail is actually very, very important. And starting by the battery life, I know Sarah talked about it, but I can't stress how important it is. But what's very important is, again, because I've been using action cams for quite some time, is the progress that they have made over the years. Now, I come from Osmo One. So if some of you remember that camera, you will remember that the battery was not as good. This is a massive improvement from the previous battery. I used to swap batteries quite a bit, so you always got to make sure that you've got enough batteries and so on. But the reality is now with the new Action Cam, with the new Action 5 Pro, there are two things that really stood out. So the first thing is, whenever I'm walking around with 3 batteries, I know that I have 12 hours worth of battery in my pocket. So whenever I'm going on a dive trip, and for those of you who are scuba divers, you will know that most of the time you're actually out on the boat for the whole day. You do not necessarily have access to power points, so that is a huge plus for me. And the second thing, I'm not sure whether you have noticed, but the battery are actually the same size, which means that you can actually use the previous battery and vice versa. So that's a massive pro versus some of the competitors, I would say. You might have heard about some of the recent announcements. The battery size is exactly the same, so that's a massive pro when it comes to battery altogether. Second, internal memory, I think you talked about 46, it was 47. Internal memory, like, as trivial as that may sound, it's super important. Like, most of the time, we're dealing with SD card and we don't necessarily know which one is full, whether you backed up the SD card or not. So having this in the back of my head kind of brings me peace of mind, just to kind of make sure that I know that just in case, if I'm running out of battery or whatever it is, I'm going to have extra footage or extra storage that I can actually leverage. Now, the third thing that really helps whenever I'm creating content is always making sure that, of course, framing is important, but making sure that whenever you are walking or whenever you are capturing action, the stabilization is going to be on point. So this is kind of like the charts that I've built to kind of understand what was the focal length and so on. So obviously, when you're capturing action, you always want to make sure that you're going to have an angle that is going to be as wide as possible, so then you have the ability to kind of play around and like crop in pose or edit it the way you want it. So in terms of like the focal, if you go all the way to like the widest, you're gonna have like the 9mm, which is super wide. And if you go in terms of the tightest, you're going to be dealing with 17mm with the highest level of stabilization. Now, a couple of days ago, I met up with a friend of mine. His name is Hakim. Hakim is Malaysian, and that's the kind of stuff he does. So I was like, hey, I need to spend a couple of hours with you. I'm going to mount the camera on your bike, and I want to test like different features to kind of understand like how is the stabilization performing and so on. And the video we're working with, I've seen this at the beginning at least. This is kind of body shots without stabilization, and this is the rock steady mode on. And that's not even the highest level of stabilization. Now, if we were to push it all the way to rock steady plus, the angle will be slightly tighter, yet still usable. So very happy to see like the kind of level of stabilization that we're actually able to get with this. I don't have to worry, I just have to worry about frame. So that's kind of like the first point around having that peace of mind, knowing that I have a camera that is essentially going to enable me to create the contents that I'm trying to capture without worrying too much. The second thing is this camera, and again, I've been using it for a couple of weeks or so, is enabling me to be more creative. It's giving me a couple of features, and I call those smart features. I'm not sure whether that's the official name or not, but these features are actually enabling me to be a bit more creative in the kind of stuff that I do. So they've talked about this. I was very curious about this feature. When they announced it, I was like, what is this? Like, I've heard about subject tracking on the Pocket 3. I've heard about active track on a drone whenever I'm like tracking my car, for example, but I've never heard about subject tracking on an action cam. So I was very curious. Is there any badminton lover here? One of the reasons I'm happy to be based in Malaysia is because badminton players are really good. So this is me just trying like the features. So basically, all I do is just put in the action code on the tripod, track myself, and start playing without worrying about the angle whatsoever. And what you see is, as I'm playing, the camera is kind of moving automatic. So I'm shooting horizontally, but I'm getting a vertical frame right away that is kind of tracking me throughout the entire game. So whenever I'm like watching myself again, I can kind of see, you know, how much progress I still need to make whenever I'm playing badminton. Now, I've only tested it in vertical mode. You have the ability to actually do this horizontally as well. So if you're shooting horizontally in 4K, it will scale down the video to a 2.7K, and then the framing will be super dynamic, and you will always be at the center of the frame. So super easy to like use. I never thought this was going to be so easy. The game usually lasts 10 to 15 minutes if you're good. The tracking did not jump at all. So for the whole video, 50 minutes, I was on point tracked from the beginning all the way to the end. So this is a feature that I'm super excited that I'm definitely going to be using a lot. Another feature that I was very curious about was, hey, 960 frames per second. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Like, what do you mean by that? Because in terms of the specs, it does say that you can shoot 4K 120 in a 4:3 format maximum. So I'm like, okay, great. How do you go all the way to 960 frames per second? So we tested it. Again, this is Hakim on his bike a couple of days ago, where this is the real speed of the footage. So he goes downhill really fast. And this is when the ultra slow motion is enabled. That was to me super mind blowing. I generated this video right after I did this. I did not have to go to my laptop. I did not have to pull up any editing software. I literally connected the camera to my phone and I pressed the button that says ultra slow motion. And within seconds, this is the footage that I got right away. I was damn impressed. I tested it even more. I was like, okay, let's try to see this guy jumping like a crazy person, like left, right, and center. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Let's try to capture this at different speed. So what you're seeing here is the real speed in terms of how high and how fast those jumps go. What you're seeing here is what I call automatic speed, which is essentially 20% speed ramping. So this is the maximum you'll be able to actually slow down your footage without losing any frame. That is still quite impressive. This is a 4.120 frame per second. If I wanted to use this in any edits, I'll definitely be able to pull it off. But if I wanted to go even slower, even tighter, I have the ability, and again, this is generated from my phone. I could not believe that I was actually able to generate that kind of footage from my phone, and this is the kind of stuff that you get at 960 frames per second. So super impressive stuff. I'm definitely going to be using this feature a lot, given how easy and accessible that is. Super night mode. Okay, again, I have not had the opportunity to push that much, but again, as our colleague mentioned earlier, I watched a lot of reviews. Some of you may have heard about Potato Jet. Potato Jet, definitely an awesome guy. I watched his deep dive on super light mode, and I was like, this is impressive. I understand the lighting is not great just now. I don't know how well I can see, but the difference that you get in terms of low light is not a bit, it's significant. So whenever you're looking at low light performance, the AI and the smart features that are packed into this camera are definitely a massive advantage. So you don't have to worry about exposing your shots too much. So definitely big plus. Last, I think this is more about discovery. So whenever I'm scuba diving, whenever I'm down there exploring, seeking for sharks and whales and so on, I want to spend more time discovering stuff and less time focusing on my setting, whether the camera is capturing the colors accurately and so on. So discovery is super, super important. This is, I don't think I've ever heard of a camera that's got a built-in pressure gauge into the camera, which is very impressive. As you know, if you're a diver, you need to have a dive computer which has a pressure gauge, but I've never seen this into a camera, which is something to me very interesting, because I'm like, wow, I'm going to dive in the next couple of weeks and I just cannot wait to actually take it underwater and kind of see how the camera is going to be responding. Now, the first worry, obviously, if you remember action cams back in the days, was oh, I need a housing, is it going to flood? You don't really have to worry about this anymore if you're doing just some fun dives. If you're going anywhere from 0 to 20 meters, you're safe. You don't even need to worry about having a case. Now, obviously, if you're going a bit deeper, if you are going into the 30s and the 40s, you will need a housing. But the second concern that comes to mind whenever you're diving is going to be the color temperature. As you know, if you are going below 6 meters, you're starting to lose the colors, and therefore the quality of the footage is not as good as what you would experience in real life. So having the color temperature sensor into the camera makes also a huge difference to kind of make sure that you spend less time correcting color and making sure that the color that you saw with your own eyes are accurate altogether. So definitely something that I'm very excited about, that I'm going to be posting a lot about in the next couple of weeks when we get to dive. And the last thing before I hand it back to you is I've never been a big mobile editor. I'm a hardcore computer editor. I edit a lot of my work on my computer. I don't use the mobile app very much. But for this time around, I was like, hey, well, let's try. The reason, and one of the main reasons I never really used the app is because they did not have that feature right here. So I shoot all my stuff in T-Log, so that I have more freedom in terms of how I actually want to tolerate the footage and so on. But now, from the phone itself, I actually have the ability to kind of put a nice layer of color onto it, export the footage onto the phone, and post it on Instagram pretty much right away. So massive highlight. And second thing on the Mimo app that I really liked is the dashboard feature. So I don't know how crazy you guys are about data, but whenever I'm going out there, whenever I'm doing a lot of stuff, dashboard and data is always something that I really get excited about. So whenever you're using the app, and this is just the example from a couple of days ago, where you have the ability to take your footage and just kind of put a lot of additional layer on top of the footage to kind of provide more information about what you guys were up to, what you were doing in terms of whether it's the altitude, the time, whatever it is. You have the ability to, from the app itself, export this right away and put it on top of your footage and use it for social media altogether. Now, again, Sarah has covered this. I'm not going to spend too much time. These specs are awesome, but for me, what's more important is that these are the specs that I find to be enhancing my content. Remember that, whether you started to create content or not, just get started, grab a camera, whether it's the 4 or 5, the 5 preferably, and go and create content. If you guys want to see some of the footage that we are going to be posting on the water in the next couple of weeks or so, feel free to check me out on Instagram. Other than that, thank you so much for having me today. I'll see you soon.
I love that. Thank you very much, Baptiste.